Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Inspired Writer Collective podcast. You're here with me, Elizabeth, and Stephanie, and we want to start off by saying thank you for those that came to last weekend's virtual writers retreat. Well, at this point, when the episode airs, it'll be 2 weekends ago. It was so great to get to spend time with you guys. I got refocused on my edits for my memoir because of those writing times and that built in accountability of showing up together. And it's always so fun to get to meet podcast listeners, whether you're a more recent listener or you've been with us for a while. I mean, it really means so much to us, and the kind words you've said about what you've gotten from listening to this podcast and what you hope to do with your writing because of it. We are just so honored to share that space with you. So thank you. And also, listeners, you won't believe this. Reese Witherspoon knows that our podcast exists. I'm going to let Stephanie tell you all about this.
Yes, listeners, this is such an exciting development from this week. So, I was diving deep into seeing authors, and I had the opportunity this past week to meet and greet with Reese Witherspoon and Harlan Coben about their new book, Gone Before Goodbye, that just released. And when I went to the event, I wore the Inspired Writer Collective t-shirt that Elizabeth and I have. And when I walked up to take my picture, Harlan Coben was like, "Well, that's interesting. The Inspired Writer Collective podcast." And Reese Witherspoon was like, "What's that?" And then the Inspired Writer Collective. And so it was just this very brief moment because they were, of course, pushing everybody through the line for the meet and greet. But it was very exciting just to have that encounter. And the other really cool thing that I'll say about the event is that it was really interesting to then sit in the audience and listen to Reese Witherspoon speak from the perspective of a writer. This is the first thing she's ever written. She's produced plenty, she's acted in plenty. I mean, she loves books, as many of you probably know. She has Reese's book club, but this is the first time she wrote a novel. And she said, "Well, I just had this idea that wouldn't leave me alone." And she said, "I had to do something with it." And so then she said, "But I don't know how to write a book." And so she said, "Who do I know?" And that's when she knew it was going to be a thriller, and she knew she was a big fan of Harlan Coben, and he does write wonderful thrillers. And so she reached out to him, and he was, of course, like, "Well, I'm not really sure I want to collaborate. Let's meet." And so then they met, and Reese presented her idea and proposal and everything, and then they decided to collaborate. And so it was just really cool because we all know she's a Hollywood actress and she does a lot of other things and she's very successful. But to see her in that position as a writer was part of my own work in manifesting, I want to be in her chair. And I've done that with lots of different authors that I like and that I follow and read their work. And this was just like the ultimate experience of, here's somebody who I admire, and she's just as wonderful in person as on screen. I mean, because I know of people who've had experiences where they meet somebody that they really admire and they're like, "Oh, that fell short." But no, this definitely was amazing. And it was just so much fun to be wearing the podcast t-shirt and have just a moment, and we're going to carry this forward for sure, just because I mean, there's some recognition and just that connection with the podcast.
Yeah, I absolutely was so thrilled when you told me that. Like, she's one of my favorites. And that was so cool that you got to experience that. I love that you keep putting yourself in places out in like the real world, physical form, not just virtually, where you're getting to network with these kind of people, where you're putting yourself in rooms with these people, and that just brings you so much closer. You recently went to a book festival too, this earlier in the week, where you got to talk and hear and listen and glean so much knowledge. And today we're going to be talking about the core message and how it can apply to fiction writers, because you have been participating within the Memoir Master Plan program that I facilitate, and you have taken that and gleaned your own sort of theme or message as you think about when I'm standing on that big stage, what's the deeper message I have to share with the audience? And I just think it's so cool the way you've adopted that and where you're taking it.
Well, yeah, it's been really fun because, I mean, of course, this is after multiple iterations of the course that I'm sitting through it again. And the more that you and I have talked about core message and just the information from the course, I kept thinking, there has to be an application to this for me because we can always learn from other genres as writers. And in fact, I think it's almost necessary to put yourself outside of your genre and take from other writers and other ideas and say, well, how can I put this in my own work? And that's, as you said, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking, okay, if I want to be on those stages and I want to be in that chair at a bookstore or I want to be at a signing event, what am I going to tell people that my book is about? Yeah, I can talk about what the book is about. But for me, I really feel there needed to be a deeper message, a deeper reason for why I was coming to the page. And, I really like the stories that I'm telling, but it really came into real time and space this summer when I had all the life events where it was very clear that my stories are rooted in stories of second chances, opportunities to try something again, to find a love again, to uh, do something that you weren't sure about, but you're like, I have another opportunity to do this. And so as this, this sort of coincided with the start of the Memoir Master Plan Cohort, which made it even cooler, where I was like, oh my goodness, like I I can actually like be a part of this conversation, even though I'm working on fiction. Because one, I mean, obviously, as we know as writers, I mean, so much of fiction comes from our real life experiences. And then on the other side, it's like, well, okay, I'm not going to write a memoir, but I know that I can take these ideas and these tools. And that's what made it really cool because then I was like, oh my goodness, now it's clear to me when I get to that point of sitting in the chair and being on the stage that I have a message.
Well, and it's something your future readers will really resonate with, right? Because then you don't just have to sell them on each individual story because you have this broader theme. So if they resonate with second chances and the ways that we take advantage of those, the ways that we see those in our lives, the ways that we explore them and grieve the first chance that we missed
Mm,
and make it, a bigger impact with the second chance. I think it speaks to the way the universe works, where if you miss your flight the first time, there's another one that's going to come around, and you don't have to fear that. And you're walking your readers through so many different examples of that through the stories that you tell. Whether you're doing this in a YA format or in an adult romance format,
mhm.
I think it's beautiful that you have this uniting theme because it's going to draw your readers to you, your audience to you. It's just like how we know there's sort of a feel to like a Glennon Doyle memoir, right? Or a Brene Brown book. You know what you're gonna get, and there's that consistency across the books, even if they feature different topics. Um, and I think that's so great from like a branding perspective, even a marketing perspective as a fiction writer, that you have this bigger theme that stretches across your sort of universe that you create, right? Because you've got this fictional world, but your characters sort of intermingle within the world, are related, it takes place in the same place, and so you're creating that whole world for them and through the lens of second chances. Just like we do in memoir, where we use the core theme to help unite the individual stories and experiences that we share with our reader.
Well, yeah, and I really found that for me, especially for those of you who've been listening for a while, and you know that I've self-diagnosed myself ADHD, and Elizabeth knows all too well that my ideas are here, there, and I land somewhere. And this was very key for me to say, like, yes, this is the message that I want to share with my readers. And it's really brought for me too is this ability to really focus on my writing more deeply and show up knowing like, okay, like I know what the common thread is going to be throughout this. And it helps my brain focus in and it doesn't allow me to get distracted with like, well, maybe I could write about this, or maybe I could do
Mm.
this, or I love this idea, or I love this strand of events that I could put in a novel. It's like, no, okay, my adult romance that I'm working on was about a woman who loses her husband unexpectedly, and she has a teenage daughter who is the protagonist in my YA book. So I'm weaving together the books because having more than one project is helping me right now. But again, it comes back to having found a purpose essentially and that purpose is really helpful. And as Elizabeth said, building a platform as a writer too, thinking about, well, what is my brand? What is my brand as a writer? Because I think one of the things that gets lost sometimes is that as a writer, that is your business, that is your job. And too often, I think in our world, you say to somebody, I'm a writer, and they're kind of look at you like, well, why would you think to do that? And of course, you feel like you have to come up with all these things behind it, but it is a legitimate job, career path, direction to take yourself in. And the hardest part eventually for some of us is the marketing and branding and putting ourselves out there. And this allows for that to become much more clear. And like I said, I'm going to these events in person because it's helping me really say like, yes, I can be that person in that chair. If that person is doing it who's a real person like I am, not the celebrity, because I went to the Heartland Book Festival in Kansas City, Missouri the weekend before the event with Reese Witherspoon, and there were authors there who have published many books, and they're just everyday people. They're not the big celebrity booksellers. Um, a few of them were, but at the same time, you're like, I can do this.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love too that you highlighted how landing on this core message actually reignited your inspiration for getting back to your writing projects. Because even though we dread the future marketing and everything of our books and how we're going to represent ourselves as writers, you actually have to have a book to market and to represent you. And sometimes the writing can be a really difficult part to get through. And you and I have both experienced some creative slumps in the past couple of months. Go back and listen 2 episodes ago if you aren't familiar yet with where we were on that. But it's so cool the way that in defining your core message and in renewing your focus, it's helped you tap into a deeper level of inspiration because it's not just about those particular characters in that one story anymore. It's about this whole thing that you're bringing in from your personal life, this bigger message that you're hoping to communicate to the audience about how much faith they should put into the hope for a second chance and how much value that has and the gratitude we express for having that second
Mm.
chance when we get those. And I think that's really cool too, because so often in the writing stages we can get really lost, and that is sounds like sort of your lighthouse beacon right now,
Hmm.
where regardless of what's going on around you, and of course there's pauses and things with different seasons of life, but that's what's leading you forward, and knowing that you're so strong in the importance of that message, that's what's helping you sit down in the seat and put words on the page for the individual stories that you're crafting.
Oh, absolutely. And I think too, I think the other piece that's really helpful is having the structure of showing up to the Memoir Master Plan Cohort group and sitting in community and connection with other women writers who, yes, I'm not writing memoir, but that's not necessary for even being a part of the Memoir Master Plan cohort. Yes, it's definitely beneficial and there's so much to gain from it. But I also would say, too, that as a fiction writer, it's brought so much value to me to just be in that space and soaking up what the other women are talking about and listening to their journey and their process because it's so relatable for all of us as writers. It doesn't matter what genre we're writing in, there we all have similar struggles, and to find yourself in that space that you, Elizabeth, lead so masterfully in, no, you really do. Like, I mean, you just really bring together the community and create this space for comfort. And like I said, I mean, I'm showing up as a fiction writer, like, what am I going to contribute? But really, there are options for contribution, but it's not that. It's that I'm taking away from it a huge piece of learning that I never anticipated would, like, come to me, that, like, oh, wow, in fiction, like, a core message has value. And maybe, everybody talks about it in different ways, but I guess I had never really, like, come to that. It's like I have this story, I have this idea, I'm plotting it out. It goes, this happens and this happens, and there are all these different parts that happen. But I hadn't really come to that place of, oh, like, having a thread that weaves throughout is so valuable. And of course, I recognize that as a reader. That's the funny thing is, I mean, as a
Right, right.
reader, like, it's very clear to me when I'm reading a book that, like, okay, there's this common, but it was just so funny to me, like, why did it take me so long to come to that? But it's been so beneficial.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie, for saying all that. And, I've been toying around with an idea that may be more broadly available to, excuse me, some of our writers on our email list and those of you who listen to this podcast regularly. What I'm thinking about putting together is a core message masterclass. And what this would look like is either a full day or maybe a weekend, Saturday, Sunday masterclass where we would just do core message. I would pull out basically that unit of study from the broader memoir program and bring in things with Stephanie's help that would make it applicable to both fiction and to memoir, and where we would get to spend a really concentrated time exploring that as a group for any of the writers that are interested. And my reason for wanting to offer something like this is for those people who don't have the time resource to commit to a 6 or 8 week program, those that have maybe a smaller project scope where they're not ready to dig into the outlining of it or the more detailed character development pieces that we cover in the broader program, but they are ready to start thinking about that core message and that thing that could unite either their multiple fiction stories or their memoir experiences. Also, it would just be a lower price point for those that, the bigger course is out of financial reach at the time. So this is still very much in concept form, and I wanted to talk about that today in this episode because I want to start seeing what level of interest there is for this. If you're not interested, if no one's interested, then fine. I'll just keep the program as it is. We'll do it's working, it's creating beautiful projects, it's giving these writers clarity and really igniting their interest in sharing their stories with like such an urgency that
Mhm.
I haven't seen before. It's beautiful. And so if there's no interest for this smaller program, that's fine. I won't I won't spend my creative energy that way. But if it does sound like something that you would really benefit from in your writing, whether fiction or memoir, please shoot us a message. Please email us hello at inspiredwritercollective.com. Let me know because if there's enough interest, I would love to put this kind of
Mhm.
program together to be a nice entry level for those who are not ready to commit to the bigger writing course or just aren't ready to take on that writing project yet, but want to start getting inspired, want to start playing with different ideas. That's sort of my vision for this core message masterclass. So leave a comment, send us an email. Let me know what you think.
I think it would be so amazing to be able to offer that to our community of listeners and those who have already even you provide the invitation to come back. Once you take the Memoir Master Plan cohort one time, you can keep coming back without having to pay in the subsequent times you return. And so your investment really carries on because sometimes, as we know, as we've talked about, life happens. And when you commit to things, there are disruptions. And so it's nice to have that opportunity to come back. But it's also great, too, to potentially have this offer on the table for both of us to put our heads together and develop something around core message because listener, as you're hearing today, it's brought me clarity, it's brought me focus, it's brought me inspiration and working on my manifesting that I'm going to be on the stage. I mean, there's so many pieces that have come together for my identity as a writer. And, I am definitely someone who would prefer to not be on camera, to not be on stage, not, but this has ignited this whole new excitement for me of I can be that person because now I know where I'm standing in my vision for myself as a writer, my vision for my stories, and that will make it so much easier when I'm invited to those spaces.
Yeah, plus you pull this core message straight out of your lived experiences. And I know you've also taken that in on a personal level, and that has had impact on how you view some of these recent life experiences you've gone through, how, your recent move has impacted you and all of this. So it's like it not only impacts your writing world and these fictional worlds that you're crafting, but it impacts you as the writer. You, even the Stephanie that is not the writer, just the
Hmm.
everyday, impact that focusing on these core messages can have.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And as we know, I mean, with fiction, there's so much that comes from our lived experience. And while I don't plan to write a memoir, or maybe I will, who knows?
I'm
I
working
might.
on it. I'm working on you.
Elizabeth is trying. Um, and so, it may happen, but again, there's so much that I can already bring to the story. And that's where, again, having this structure around core message and just all of the resources that are provided through the course that, allow for that exploration and that discovery and it is such a cool process. I mean, to think about the potential for a core message master class and what you can walk away with just from that is so powerful for writers in their process.
Absolutely. So, again, listeners, if that sounds of any interest to you, by no means is your interest an official commitment. I'm just trying to figure out what degree of interest there is in something, an offering like that. Please send us an email. Please comment if you're watching this on YouTube, and let us know. And of course, this would be open not just to women, but to male writers as well. We do keep the Memoir Master Plan cohort as women only, but this would be more broadly open for a weekend master class. So let us know what you think.